clash with a prior diary commitment that he has, so unfortunately he won't be able to join us either.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interest they may have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Agenda item 3, minute of the meeting of the Scrutiny Committee held on the 1st of February 2024, and it's pages 3 to 6 on your agenda papers. Can we agree the minute?
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed. Agenda item 4, role and action log, pages 7 to 8. Does anyone have any questions on the role and action log?
Yes.
Councillor Binney.
Thank you. Regarding the building maintenance performance report, I know a report will be added to the agenda on the meeting on the 5th of December, but can I ask just now, is it on track?
Okay, Mr. Gillespie. Mr. Benny.
Through you, Provost. I think progress is being made. I don't know how we would answer the question you've posed. You know, it's quite a significant piece of work, and I don't think a kind of verbal update would suffice. So if you'll allow me, I'd prefer to come to the committee with the full details to allow you to fully scrutinise matters.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, thanks very much. Any other questions on the role and action log? No. Agenda item 5, Council Plan End of Year Q4 Public Performance Report, and it's pages 9 to 68 on your agenda papers, and it'll be Ms Algie that will be speaking to that.
Thank you, Provost. Provost, this report sets out the Council's performance against our agreed success measures for the final quarter of 23-24, and that period runs from January through to March 24. And it was agreed that we would report this to you on a 6-monthly basis, and in between times, quarterly reports are considered by a corporate management team, and the information within those reports are also published on our website as part of our Falkirk Performs section of the website. Before looking at the detail of the report, I think it's worth saying that the report must be considered within the context in which we are currently working. And a key part of that context is our financial sustainability and the challenges that we're facing and actions that we're needing to take to get to the Council being financially sustainable. Some of those actions inevitably mean an impact on our performance, and this could be through a reduction in budgets in certain areas of service delivery, or it could be a reduction in our workforce as a result of savings that have been agreed. So all of that needs to be taken into that context. I would stress, however, that directors and their teams are very mindful of the continued need to deliver on the Council plan priorities and the commitments that Council made in that to our communities. Our success measures that are in the report are aligned to those priorities, and the Council plan also has enablers which are there to support priorities, and this report covers all of those. As a reminder, we set local targets for all of our success measures, and those are set out in the report beside the success measure and our current performance. And I think it's worth saying as well that we have really good teams and a good workforce across the Council. They're ambitious for the Council area, and our performance in a number of our success measures shows that, with some of the measures outperforming the Scottish average. We do, however, have areas where we definitely need to improve, and we know that. As mentioned just previously, the Appendix 1 sets out our latest assessment. There are around 108 measures that we have. There's 95 of these in the report. 95 is made up of 55 local measures, which we feel are important to assessing whether we can meet the demands of the Council plan and whether we are delivering. And there's a further 40 measures which come from the local government benchmarking framework, the LGBF, and that enables us to compare across Scotland as well. So in terms of overall performance, these measures are showing that we have data available for those that we have data available for, around 41% are on track or exceeding the targets that we set. 17% have just missed those targets. That does, however, leave us 29% where we're not meeting the targets that we set locally. And we're mindful that we need to look at those. But it's also important to say that even of those 29%, there are still a number of those measures where we are performing well against the Scottish average, and I'll come back to that later. Paragraphs 5.5 through to 5.10, of the report set out our performance against each of our priorities and our enablers. So under Stronger and Healthier Communities, we have 55% of our measures either meeting or being close to target. 28% doesn't meet target. And I should say these figures don't add up to 100% because you'll see in the papers that there are some where we don't have the data available yet. For the priority of promoting opportunities in educational attainment and reducing inequalities, 68% of our success measures are either meeting or close to our target, with 21% not achieving target. And for supporting a thriving economy and green transition, 50% are on target or close to it, and 23% not meeting the target. We've set out the same information in paragraph 5.8, 5.9 and 5.10 around our enablers as well. For those indicators which are part of the local government benchmarking framework, and as I said earlier, we compare across Scotland with these, there are 32 measures which we've got information available for. 15 of these are in the top 2 quartiles of all Scottish councils in terms of where we sit relative to performance across Scotland. We do, however, have 3 measures in the bottom quartile, and the top and bottom quartiles and the indicators that are in these are set out in paragraphs 5.13.3 and 5.13.4 for members' information. When assessing our local targets, we have 9 local government benchmarking indicators which don't meet our local targets. So we're showing them as red, but those 9 are still matching or outperforming the Scottish average across Scotland. So 4 of these are also in the top quartile, so it shows how the impact of our ambitious local targets impact on whether these are determined red, amber or green. All of that, I think, needs to be considered when you're reviewing the performance of the council in the context that we've got here. Chief Executive and Directors have considered all of these indicators, and they've also been considered by our corporate management team. For those areas where we're not meeting targets, we either know the reasons for that, we expect this to change, or we have improvement plans either being developed or already in place, and that work is well underway. We're also in the process of reviewing our targets for 24-25 to ensure that these remain realistic in the context in which we are working, but equally, alongside that, they need to be ambitious for our communities. Members will also be aware that we recently received the Best Value report from the Accounts Commission, and that report is going to Council on the 26th of June for you to consider. That report also highlighted that the Accounts Commission has found improvements in our ways of reporting and monitoring performance. And the quote that they have provided in the report is set out at paragraph 4.6 of the report in front of you today. Our Best Value thematic report, which was undertaken in 23 and fed into the Accounts Commission report, also had an action plan that sat alongside that in response to what was being said at that time. And that required us to monitor and respond to our performance monitoring and look at what we were doing. That was done in May. And as a result, we're also making a number of changes to the timetable for reporting, and that's to ensure members have as much information as possible. As I said earlier, there's some of the information that we don't have the data for yet. So to try and improve on that and to give you as full a picture as possible, we're looking to change the reporting timeline. So our mid-year performance will come to you in January 25, and our end-of-year performance will come to you in September 25. And we hope that that will make sure that you have more data and are able to scrutinise that more fully when it comes to you. We're also looking at the local government benchmarking framework and the indicators within that to see if there are any others that we would like to add, and also the targets against them. And we'll highlight these in the next report that comes to Scrutiny Committee. So the recommendations, Provost, are set out in the report, and that's for committee to note and scrutinise the performance of the council. And myself and colleagues would be happy to answer any questions on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The whole purpose of scrutiny is to try and drill down a lot of the detail and to try and where we're already doing well, just to how can we improve on that. And that's it's no, we're not here to criticise anybody. It's to try and see how we can improve performance. So you mentioned that there's 29% of targets that are still not being met, and you suggested there's going to be a review. Is there any more detail you could give on that? How you're going to review them, and how you're going to change the targets, etc.
I was happy to pick that up. So there have been 2 meetings. Well, these reports have been to corporate management team, first of all, for us to assess our performance and take those back into our service management teams. In addition to that, there have been 2 meetings with the chief executive directors, Amanda, and our performance colleagues. Certainly one of them is on the call today, where we have gone through these almost line by line to look at that performance and to assess where we can improve, what the picture's like, where we are against that Scottish average, where that's available. There are actions being taken. So one of those areas would be around our homelessness service, and we have a report going to CMT in a couple of weeks' time on that one. There are other areas around street cleanliness where we know, for example, the performance there isn't what it should be, but actually we also know that the more up-to-date data that isn't recorded in this report because it's for end of year has actually shown an improvement. So there's a number of steps that we're taking to make sure that for those that are not performing to the target that we've got, we are taking actions there to look at those.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of questions that I'll ask later, but I'll just open up for questions. Councillor Berry, then Councillor Smith.
Firstly, I want to say, the staff and folk at council do a fantastic job, and we here today in Scrutiny is in no way criticising. We're all working together to improve performance and help each other. Though I do have a question. Data is very important, as we can see. The whole report's data driven. Can you please explain the reason for the decline in data available as shown in the tables? I think you touched on that. Though what I would say is, having no data, would it be reasonable to think that this could possibly distort the performance ratings and percentages we've got at the moment? Therefore, are we reflecting an accurate picture regarding performance, and how we're going to address having more data included? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. It's a really good point that you're making there, and that's absolutely the reason why we're looking at changing the dates on which we bring this report to members, because we want to make sure that you've got as full information as possible. There's a number of reasons why we don't have that data available. Some of that is simply because of the timescales in which our local government benchmarking framework information is gathered, and there is always a delay in gaining some of that information. Some of that is about some of the information we gain through the reports to regulators. So there's a whole variety of different timescales that sit behind most of this data, other than some of the local performance indicators. So it's quite a complex landscape of where we pull all of the data from, but we're hopeful that if we delay the reports coming to you, that would enable us to provide that much fuller picture, because I think you're right. When you then look at that fuller picture, it gives you a much more accurate sense of where we are overall as a council in terms of performance.
Any other questions?
I do. Yes. So
Can I come in just on the back of that, Provost?
Okay.
My apologies, Councillor Binney. It's just on the very question that Councillor Binney has asked. Could I just maybe expand on it a wee bit? I'm sorry, Lorna, it's just to try and keep, the one item, if you understand.
Of course, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Mrs. Algie, the question that was raised by Councillor Binney there, it raises that you mentioned that there are a number of factors where a number of places where you actually gather your information from. The question that leads me to pose is this the best time for the Scrutiny Committee to be looking at a year-end report when this would appear it's going to recur. So would it be better for the Scrutiny Committee to maybe reschedule an end-of-year report to sometime, whether it's a quarter further down? Apologies again to Councillor Binney for interrupting there, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor McCabe, for that question. And yeah, you're absolutely correct in that. And we are looking then in the report about changing the timing of this end of year report to September. So we should have, for example, a really good example would be all the attainment statistics, for example, which we get, sort of early August. So we'll have them by then if we report in September. So it's making sure that if we report in September, then we've got as full a set of data for you as possible. Yeah. And we can do some narrative on what that means then for the overall picture of performance across the council. Yeah.
Thanks, Mrs. Algie. Thanks, Promise, for your indulgence.
No, I think that's a good point. The sort of lag in the data, so just, so we take a fuller picture. What's the sort of best time? So it's a really good point. Any other questions, Councillor Brown?
Yes, I do have, and it's regarding the voice turnaround. Basically, I hear from other people, I hear it often from people in the community, when will they be given the keys for my house? And they'll say, oh, it's been months, because people are desperate to move in. And that's one of the biggest life changes, life events they've got, is moving home. Now, looking at the success measure, the average turnaround time remains stubbornly high, and I've had conversation in the past, and I know mainly the reasons for that. However, in view of the recent report to the executive of the HRA account being 3.3 million over budget, how will that impact on improving our turnaround time in future? Therefore, could more information be provided with the plan? So we need to know this presently to address the issue of void turnarounds. I do also appreciate the great efforts our BMD make to address all these turnarounds.
So is that a question for Mr. Benny or for yourself? Okay.
You asked if it was a question for Mr. Benny. It's really joint work that we are doing with our colleagues in police services to resolve these issues. So we know we have an overspend. That's for a whole variety of reasons. That is, some of that's down to supplies being more expensive. But ultimately, you're right to point out, what does that mean for voids turnaround? So what we have done is there have been numerous meetings now between colleagues in police services within BMD and with housing services. Malcolm himself are involved in those discussions, and we have an action plan now in place that we are working through to try and address much of those concerns. That action plan is focused on trying to reduce the turnaround time of voids, but it's equally trying to reduce the spend that we use to do that, and looking at a whole range of options. Some of those need to be tried out to make sure that they are successful, and we are going to monitor that really carefully over the next months to make sure that we can see changes happening in the right way. And we will certainly be putting the report up to corporate management team on a lot of that, and can do a briefing for members at an appropriate stage in that process as well.
Okay. Anyone else should bring in at this point, would you say? Or are you happy with that answer?
Yeah, I'm happy with that answer, but I do feel that you're putting a plan in place. That's really good, and that but just hope that doesn't impact in any other BMD work, like repairs and things like that. So we need to be mindful we're not paying Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. So the plan, I hope, that comes forward is balanced and looking at the fuller picture, because we don't want to impact residents out there, because they've all got a priority, really. So it's about balance.
Okay, could I just ask, first of all, where will the plan be reported to, the executive or council?
Obviously, it's an operational plan, so at the moment it's getting reported to corporate management team. Okay. But as I say, part of that plan would be to do a briefing for members to update you on that work.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring in Mr. Benny. Has got any comment? Looks like, I don't know about that.
No, obviously that's my sitting face, not smiling enough. I have nothing to add.
Okay, thanks very much. Any other questions, Councillor Binney, or is that you for a moment?
I do actually have another question.
Right, what I'll do is I'll go to Councillor Spears and I'll come
Right,
back to you,
that's
Councillor
lovely,
Binney.
thank you.
Councillor Spears.
Thanks for your indulgence, Provost.
You're welcome.
That's nice to hear. So what we have here is an in-progress report. Do you think that will engender confidence with the public at large and Falkirk Council that we are 29% behind target? Everything's in flux at the moment until we can get an actual report that will tell us the progress and performance of this council. I know how I judge it. I judge it on the amount of inquiries I get. And we have terrible telephone service where people have to wait up to an hour to get through. They tend to phone their councillor. So you better believe our inquiries are through the roof. And we're busier than we have ever been. And since we're talking about performance, this is not being registered or taken on board by the general public within our district. They are greatly concerned about our performance. And for to come forward with this interim report really doesn't tell us much. It's full of hope and wishes. But people want action, they don't want hope and wishes.
Okay, thanks for your comments, Councillor Spears. Do you want to respond to that? I think you've probably covered most of it. Yeah. Councillor Anslow.
Thank you, Provost. My question centres basically around 23 and 24. Firstly, I'd like to please officers for the report. I think it's quite a good in-depth report. Although I am very disappointed in the housing area, because that's like Councillor Spears, it's where a lot of my issues lie. My question is specifically page 23 and 24. It's around the number of homeless and the home seeker as a percentage. As Veterans Champion, out with this meeting, could I be provided with the figures for homeless veterans? And going forward, could this be part of the report going forward?
Okay, Mr. Gillespie.
Morning, Provost.
Morning.
Yes, I'm happy to provide that to the local member out with the meeting.
Okay. Councillor Forrest.
Thank you, Convener. And thank you for this report. A great deal of information in it, and obviously not enough for some. So I'm going to return back to a wee bit of the data. Regarding the percentage of council budgets subject to participatory budgeting, at Q3, this was 0%, and for the year, there was no data available. Given that this is a key priority, can we explain what steps are being taken to ensure that the targets met for 24-25?
Okay. Mr. Gillespie for that?
Mr. Gillespie.
Provost, through yourself again, it's very much a priority. It's just a time issue again, as my colleague Mrs. Alger had said earlier on. We have the data. This is covered through things like our community choices, other areas of work have been carried out through education, but also where committee have agreed spends on some areas of regeneration, 2 areas of £500,000 each in their areas, which is part of the participatory budgeting. It is only a matter of timing at this point, and I think that was covered by Mrs. Alger earlier.
Okay, thank you.
So it all does come down to timing. Thank you.
I've got a question on Regarding the average number of days to secure permanent housing from the date of homeless decision, although it's dropped from 461 to 342, it's still more than the target of 120 days. I wonder if there could be any explanation on the work that's been done to improve that figure. Would that be yourself, Mr. Gillespie?
Happy to answer that, Provost. There is a lot of work being done at the present time, and it ties back into what Mrs. Algie said earlier regarding the voids. It's a void timescale means it's all part of the council, including housing, and we're looking at smartening up some of the processes that we do as well when somebody then offers homeless or turns up for homeless, and we need to speed up some of these issues. At the same time, it ties back to the availability of properties and make sure that it meets their needs. So they all go in tangent with each other, and will certainly that will be part of the report that will come back to members, as Mrs. Algie outlined. Okay, thanks very much. Another question is regarding the housing advice interviews. It's improved from 515 to 691, but it's below the council plan target of 1430. The report notes that the 24-25 target will be adjusted, but I wonder if you explain how this is going to come about. Provost, through yourself again, this is just a matter of resources at the time, and more resources and more clear processes to tackle the people who are asking for that advice and support. We'll also look at where we can manage expectations before people even in the first hand look for advice. So there's different areas and different officers that we're using to try and promote that much further, and that will be fed back again, Provost, at the next report. Okay, thank you. That's a final question, I think, from me. Regarding the percentage of stock meeting the SHQS standard, it currently stands at 70%, which meets the Scottish average but is below the council plan target of 98%. What's the expected timescale to try and meet that target? Provost, sorry, again, we are still working. There's 2 or 3 factors on that. We will certainly be looking, bear in mind this information will be a year behind, because we have to then promote our figures to the regulator, and we're comfortable that it will be higher for next year as well. It's a moving feast, because you may have sorted something this year and it will move off next again. So what I would say is we'll make great advances next year. We're still looking to attain 100%, but it's very difficult to get that in the next couple of years, Provost. Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor McCabe, then Councillor Benny.
Thank you, Provost. I'm going to try and drill down on a number of questions that have already been asked by yourself and a couple of other councillors. Majority of them probably tie in with the housing and housing concerns. As my colleague Councillor Spears has alluded to, the number of calls that we get from constituents on various factors, but probably the highest I get is to do with housing matters, whether it be repairs, housing availability, homelessness, various issues like that. So to try and drill down into some of the detail that's been contained within the report, I actually find it quite alarming that our figures are not great, and I've yet to see what strategic route we as a council are putting in place to try and answer some of the questions that are being raised. Average void property turnaround time. It's 56 days apparently is our target date, and yet we're significantly adrift of that. Now that means that because we have a number of constituents who are desperate for housing, and we have significant amounts of void properties, which we're not getting around to actually turning over and getting them available. I'd like a wee bit more detail from whoever as how we are going to tackle this. Now, before anybody answers this, one of the questions that Provost will be well aware, we had a We went for a visit to the call centre. Councillor Spears has already alluded to the length of time that's taken for constituents when they call in. It can be an hour, up to an hour at times for calls to be made. We had a very detailed discussion with the call centre. It was great. We met with the actual operators who deal the coalface, so to speak, with members of the public. And what came out of that is that there's not really a concern, as far as I was aware, there's not really a concern that the call centre is performing okay. I think the call centre is doing particularly well. The issue appears to be the services where the inquiries are directed. We appear to have serious issues with service provision. Now, I'm looking for, again, whoever, Mrs. Algie or Mr. Gillespie or Mr. Benny, to give some detail of where they see the problems and how they will actually get round to answering them. One of the things I believe, anecdotally, is that there are problems with staff retention and in filling posts. So I'm just looking for, sorry, I've gone on a wee bit too long there, but I'm looking for a wee bit more detail from whoever, just to let me know strategically what we're actually planning to do about housing shortages, getting houses for the homeless, and the turnaround in the voids time. What's causing the problems that we're not meeting these targets? Thanks, Provost.
Okay, thank you. If I could just maybe say the scrutiny panel is still working on the call centre, and we'll be discussing with services what the issues are and how they can be rectified. So that's still an ongoing discussion to be had on how the cost of the call centre could be reduced, looking at the services. But if Mr. Gillespie might want to pick up on the voids again.
Provost, thank you. There is many reasons, and as I'd highlighted previously, one of the areas is the processes that we do. One of the other bigger areas for void turnaround is utility companies. We are having a lot of issues in regards to utility companies, which is a national issue. We've also seen an increase in work that's been required to be carried out in a void house, and that's again seen across all other councils. We need to be smarter at what we do and make sure that we get in as quick as we can at early intervention to make sure that we can capture as much what I'll call work before the property becomes void as possible. That again will negate a lot of the issues that takes forward. As Mrs. Algie had mentioned earlier, we're also working with colleagues in place services. There is a plan coming to show that and to show how we are going to streamline processes and look exactly what is required in the void to get that allocated. Subsequent to that, we have 70 odd buybacks a year, which obviously impacts in a void. We've got a process in place that we're streamlining that as well, and that will give additional. Our main focus here is to get as much available void properties back in as quick as possible, and we're confident we'll do that, and we will cut down on the figure that's there is over 100 days there and get back to somewhere in the region that we've said that we're trying to catch, Provost.
Thanks very much. I'd just like to ask Mr. Bendy, who's Councillor McCabe mentioned the time taken for repairs. I wonder if you could make any comment on that particular thing. I know BMD's under review and there'll be a report coming later on, but I wonder if you'd like to make any initial comment on the time taken for repairs, which is an issue for, that's why there's a lot of calls to the call centre for constituents.
Thank you, Provost. I probably just want to distinguish between some of the questions here, because if you actually look at the report in front of you, the repairs response times 10 point something days and current performance is 9.7, so that's ahead of the council plan target and currently in the realm of Scottish average. So I think BMD's doing it's performing better than we had set a target for in terms of that non-emergency repair timeline. If we're talking about the voids, I think the 111 days is split really into kind of three elements. There's the utilities that Mr. Gillespie's already mentioned. That is something that we don't have any control over. Then there's the allocations element of that time, and then there's the repairs. And what I've said to the new management team at BMD is that I'm looking for a reduction in the region of 20 to 30% in this current financial year on our bit of that void timeline, and I would seek to update you on how we're getting on with that with regard when we come back with the report in December. I think there's a slight issue for me at the moment because obviously there's stuff that we can do in year, but at the same time there's the wider review taking place that's more a kind of strategic, what does BMD look like for the coming, in my view, 5 years, and that is still a process that needs to navigate its way both through my management team, then through discussion with housing and onto CMT. So I'm not really able to go into detail on that, but like I say, there will be activities undertaken in this financial year to make sure that we reduce the void times. But just to come back to the other point, if we're talking about repairs, BMD is actually performing better than the council plan target at the for the period 23-24.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Benny. You would like to follow up, Councillor McCabe, or are you quite happy with these responses?
If I can follow up, Provost, on a couple of points. We indicate a £3 million overspend to underperform. I suppose my question is, how much is it going to cost us to actually meet our targets? Can we have an indication? Again, I'm looking for a wee bit more detail on what that £3 million was specifically spent on. If anybody could maybe come back on that.
Would you like to pick that up, Mr. Benny?
It won't be me, but
okay.
Through you, Provost, I was going to say I'm slightly struggling because what we're talking about here is the performance report on 23-24, but the questions now appear to be, about matters that aren't in front of us because the detail about the voids isn't in this report. This report's on performance, so
I think it is related to it, Mr. Benny. I think it deserves a response. Mrs. Algie? Mr. Gillespie?
Provost, to try and help there, we going the figures from this year to last, we brought in an additional 200 void properties this year, and that has got a long, that has obviously an impact on the finances, and that will have that. As I said earlier, we have seen a rise in the repairs needed to be carried out to bring the property up, and that's to do with individual behaviours and that, but that's seen right across the council. So they're the big things that are going forward. We're also seeing a rise, as local members are aware, and we spoke about before, of the cost of materials and supplies. So that again has been additional. Going forward, we need to look at what our specification is in voids and how we address that and how we can get that smarter turnaround, because if we can get people in properties quicker, that obviously helps with a revenue figure at the other end where we can bring in rent. Provost.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Benny.
Yes, thank you, Provost. I want to ask a question about the establishment of community anchor organisations. And looking at the report, it seems a little bit strange. We've not defined what an anchor organisation is. And I have an idea, but I am not absolutely sure. But we've put a target in, so basically, I think there should be a definition of what an anchor organisation is. The target is 2, but seemingly none has been established so far. The report notes that a target of 2 will be reviewed. What is the council's realistic target? And also, what is its aim for us establishing the community anchor organisations? I don't think that aim's clear. We do have many organisations that work very well with Falkirk Council at the moment. It just seems like we're giving it a new term, an anchor organisation. But obviously the report says there's a policy development panel is working on new community engagement strategy. So, and that was one of the questions, or the work was defining what the anchor organisation is. So, so could you answer that for me? Thank you.
We'll go to Mr. Gillespie for that.
Provost, again, thank you very much. I'm pleased to say, although the figure saying 0 at the present time, we have one organisation that is becoming an anchor organisation. I'm happy to share with members once that's concluded. We thought it would be concluded before today, but unfortunately I think it'll be next week. So we have got very much a positive outcome in regards to anchor organisations. And as Councillor Binney says, we have a personal development panel that are ongoing looking at the definition, but happy to furnish members out with the actual definition that's laid down of anchor organisations, because it does change a bit, but happy to put that for a committee. Provost.
Okay,
thank you, Mr. Gillespie. Thank you, Provost.
I'd just like to make an observation regarding increase in the percentage of staff who have completed the qualities training. It's risen from 0% in Q3 to 93% by the year end. It's a significant achievement, and staff in particular, the qualities policy officer, should be congratulated on rolling out training to so many staff on such an important subject. And a final question for me, regarding the percentage of child protection planning meetings held within 28 days, the committee has previously asked about performance in this metric. Where performance has improved, it remains below the council plan target of 75%. Is this a realistic target? Who would like to take that? Mr. Reid.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think there's a number of different reasons for the information that's there, and it's something we certainly discuss at senior management team and at the Closer to Home Governance Board. So I don't have the information to hand. The chief social workers on annual leave this week, but I will endeavour to get you that information.
Okay, and I'd just like to say that this is Mr. Reid's first scrutiny meeting, so I'd like to welcome to the scrutiny committee, and I hope you enjoy them, if that's the right word. Any other questions on this performance report from anyone? Councillor Spear.
Okay, I'd like to have got the opportunity to follow up on my question, so can I take that now?
Take the opportunity.
The question that I asked was, do you think this report will engender any confidence for the public that we're here to serve? We've had a litany now of further down the line, let's wait, let's see what's happening, we'll try and meet targets. I really begin to wonder about the relevance of this report today. As Councillor McCabe says, are we not a bit early before we can actually gauge on actual results? I know here, like it's been spoken about at senior management team, and we'll get back to you and everything. We're here to discuss the performance. And to be honest, I don't think we've done that today. And I look forward to the updated report where I hope greater scrutiny is put on it.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor, you would like to respond?
Yes, thank you, Provost. Provost, I think it's worth noting that the report does give members 95 of the 108 indicators that we've got sitting in the report. There are 29% not meeting target, as Councillor Spears has said, but that means there's around 70% of them either meeting or exceeding target or close to that target. So there's good work being done there, and I would hope that would give confidence. And as I said earlier, there's also work being done in those where we're not meeting target to make sure that we have plans in place to improve on that performance. But equally for those that are close to or exceeding target, we're always looking at ways in which we can improve performance in those areas too. All of that, as I said right at the start of my introduction to the report, does, however, need to be considered in the context of in which we're working and some of the implications of meeting financial sustainability, because that will impact on performance. But equally, we are doing everything we can to make sure that we improve that performance within the resources that we've got to get it to the best standards that we can for our communities.
Thank you, Mrs. Algie. And just contrary to Councillor Spear's comment, I think we have scrutinised well for the past 45, 50 minutes. That's the whole point, and I think we've asked quite significant questions, and we've had some good responses, and there will be reports coming forward that will answer all of these questions, and they'll, we'll be able to drill down in a bit more detail when we get briefings and when we get reports to the Executive or the Council. I look forward to receiving them. Thank you. So we'll now take a short 10-minute break before.
Can I?
Oh, apologies, Councillor Spear. I thought we were finished.
No.
Councillor McCabe.
It's just a couple of final questions, Provost, just to try and scrutiny and delve down a wee bit deeper. They are still housing related. It's a major concern to me. Percentage of the council stock which meets the SHQS standard, it stands at 70%, and that's below the council plan target of 98%. I'm just wondering if does this have any impact on our housing figures, if any? You know, where the SHQS standard, does that lead to properties having to be emptied to allow the properties to be brought up to standard, or is it something that we can do without having any impact on people having to be without accommodation for any level of time? That then would lead on to a number of, I don't know if that the previous question I've just asked there, if that does have an impact onto this, where we're talking about the average number of days to secure a permanent house. That timeline or time has dropped from 461 to 342. But it's absolutely nowhere near our target of 120 days. So I've got major concerns about that. And I suppose from those, the points I'm trying to make here is when I then look back to the report at 5.10, valued sustainable workforce. Performance groupings show that the target not received is 57%. It's nearly 60% where we have a valued sustainable workforce. Now, I believe that a lot of that is probably contained within the BMD division. And I suppose rather than posing the question, Provost, I'm just trying to highlight that we probably need some further data just to ensure that we are actually specifically targeting where these concerns really should be made. Not a wee throwaway comment. 5.9 breakdown per enabler. This is for transformation and improvement, sitting at 67% of target not achieved. Just concerning. I don't know if anybody wants to pick up on just the housing issues, Provost. You know, SHQS standard, is it having an impact on our housing capability? The number of days to secure a permanent house, the length of time that is 3 times what our target is. You know, it's not even close. So I suppose the question is, does anybody want to come back on that?
Okay, we'll go to Mr. Gillespie to respond.
Provost, through yourself, the SHQS figures don't have an impact in the main in regards to us letting a property. Bearing in mind these figures are a year behind until we get the new figures forward. A lot of the percentage there was about smoke detectors, and it was about the no access of getting in. I'm pleased to say we're circa less than 20. if not going lower than that. So that figure will certainly exceed up. And when I say smoke detectors, not that properties didn't have smoke detectors, it was to meet the new regulation of interlinked. So that's dealing with. Also, we have other requirements to meet the Scottish Housing Quality Standard, and we're comfortable that will certainly be going up for next year in a very strong position. With regards to the time taken to move people from temporary accommodation to permanent, that is very much to do with availability of properties. Again, you've heard they've brought more properties in, but we are facing, as Scottish Government had called, a housing crisis as such, but it's about the availability of the properties that we've got and making sure that we can, where possible, keep people within existing properties and maintain solid relationships. So a lot of work is getting done, and I'm confident we will make strides into that, Provost.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Algie, I'd like to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. I would just like to pick up the points about workforce and transformation. So on the workforce question, it was these figures are based on a survey that was done across all of our workforce. So what we need, and it wasn't unique to BMD in terms of the results, it was across our workforce. We've got individual stats for each of our different divisions, and we are away working within our divisions to make sure we can look at how we can improve all of those areas. On transformation, I thought it was just worth clarifying to committee that there were 2 indicators where we didn't meet our targets. That does result, because there's only 3 of them, it does result in 67% not being achieved. But those 2 are very specific, and they were about projects that have clear benefits and projects delivered on time. Now, there's very specific reason for those targets. And if you look at the projects with clear benefits, we still got 90% of our projects with clear benefits. Our target's 100%. So that's where there's a very small difference there that still means we are red against our target. And the project's delivered on time and on budget. And that's partly because, and you'll see within some of the text, that we took a step back within all of the children's services transformation projects that we had, and re-looked at those and are working our way through to ensure that we've got really clear milestones, financial savings and deliverables in place. That work is now well underway, and we have a clear path for that. But I just wanted to make sure that members understand where we absolutely know where these issues are in those areas and have plans in place to tackle them.
Thanks, Mrs. Algie.
Can I just thank both Mrs. Algie and Mr. Gillespie for the 2 answers. I accept them totally, Provost. Exactly just as Mrs. Algie said, and also the question of smoke detectors and things like that. It maybe skews the figures that wee bit, so I'm more than happy to accept that. I'll just throw a final anecdotal. I suppose it's a wee indication that us councillors get. There's a range of properties in Duke Street of houses sitting empty, and the number of inquiries that I get, we've got a housing shortage. Why is nothing being done about these? I'm hoping that maybe Mr. Gillespie will, yeah, you know the one, Kenny. So if I could maybe just get a wee, I suppose the concern for me on that one, Kenny, I'll take this offline, Provost, but I suppose the concern for that one, for me, Kenny, is those properties are sitting there. Constituents go by them every day and go like that. They've been lying empty for days, months, years almost. What are we doing about it? I'll speak to you offline if you don't mind.
Thanks very much, Councillor McCabe. We'll now go to Mr. Perry.
Thanks, Provost. That's on the assumption we've concluded this item, which
well,
I
think we've concluded. Thank you.
Thank you. It's just to say that on the conclusion of that, that's the end of this section of the agenda, which is performance monitoring. This is the section which other members of the council who aren't members of the council are entitled to attend. So with the closure of this, we would need to ask those members either online or in the room who are not members of the committee and not portfolio holders to leave the meeting at this point. And I believe, without being too preemptive, I heard the word adjournment before.
Adjournment, 10-minute adjournment before we go to permitted development. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Just for Councillor Ritchie. Where's she gone? I think she's gone. Okay. Okay, thanks very much. So we'll now move on to agenda item 6, planning applications, permitted development. It's pages 69 to 113 on your agenda papers. And we'll go to Mr. McGuinness, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Provost. The purpose of the support is to provide an update and background in relation to permitted development rights as contained in the Planning Act. The Council Executive Committee at its meeting on the 16th of January 24 took a decision to refer the matter of permitted development rights as contained in the Town and Country Planning Acts to the Scrutiny Committee and requested that a seminar be arranged for all councillors on permitted development rights. The seminar itself took place on the 30th of April. The notes are contained within Appendix 1. The officers and feedback from councillors who attended this meeting found it very, very worthwhile. In fact, we would encourage members who wish to find out more about permitted developments. We'd be happy to run more workshops. We had the expert Neil Collar from Bodies attend that session, and we all felt it was a really good contribution to help everyone better understand permitted development rights in its own. The Town and Country Planning Act Order 1992, as amended, removes the need to apply for planning permission where proposals comply with the terms of the order. This provides for an extensive list of categories of development that are deemed to be granted planning permission, thereby not requiring the need to apply for planning permission. Examples of categories in such developments include developments within the curtilage of a dwelling house, change of use between use classes, agricultural buildings, development by local authorities and development by statutory undertakers, for example, in Network Rail. The report itself provides background information in regards to change of use, which commences at 4.1. It then provides information regarding the prior notification procedure at 4.16. And importantly, it also then gives details on the certificate of lawfulness, which we refer to as the CLUDs, which is an important element within permitted development rights going forward. The report also contains at 4.21 the material planning considerations for members to consider, and I'm happy to take any questions any members may have regarding this important item. Today I have a number of planning colleagues. This is very much technical in terms, so we have a number of professional planning officers who deal with this on a day-to-day basis. I'm fortunate enough to have a number of officers available today online to answer any questions regarding this piece of work.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. McGuinness. I attended the training session. I found it very useful. I think it was very detailed, and the chap was very knowledgeable, and I think he ticked a lot of boxes for me that I wasn't very sure about. So I've got a question, and it's, are you satisfied that the procedures currently in place to manage permitted development within the council are satisfactory?
Thank you, Provost. Absolutely, I can confirm they are absolutely satisfactory. I'd like to hand over to Richard Bowley to give you a bit more background on that.
Okay, Mr. Bowley.
Thanks very much, Michael. Through you, Provost. Yes, I think just to echo Michael's words as well, the members who attended the briefing will understand and have had an insight into the complexities and the variations across that element of planning law. It's always changing, which I think is a key point to note here. The systems that we have in place have to reflect that law. We seek advice internally from lawyers, and if required, we seek external advice as well. And the processes that we have in place are sufficient. I think the key question was, and this is potentially where this report arose and then coming to scrutiny, was a need to try and reflect some of those updates to members. And it was very useful. We're conscious that not all members attended that session. We do a training session with our colleagues in legal and planners for all members when we have a new bunch of members. And I think the onus is also on us as well to try and refresh that. The report makes reference to two recent changes to permitted development rights, most notably very recently in section 4.22, where the members will see there's been another raft of changes to that, and the officers are getting to grips with that. That was as recently as the 24th of May, and that was for domestic, non-domestic renewables, alteration of windows for energy efficiency and the rollout of the electricity network. So very much to help national drive to net zero. So there's always changes to this, and it's a huge piece of reference. The RTPI professional planners are across this, and we engage with lawyers where required. So it is a moving feast, and where required, our officers get updated on that. We seek extra advice. I think the key thing is going forward, how often we try and reflect that or run these sessions, not in the public meetings, but some training sessions, maybe on specific issues with members going forward. Obviously, we have to strike a balance between officers focusing on their core business of service in the planning committee, but we recognise it's important, and we should probably look at that not on a frequent basis, but as required going forward. Thank you, Prof.
Yes, thanks very much, Mr. Broadley. I'd just like to open up for questions. Anyone got any questions? Councillor McKeep.
Thank you, Provost. As everybody will know, I'm the skeleton in the cupboard, if you like. It's me who's probably been the most responsible for raising this issue, both at the Executive Council and at Planning Committee meetings. I was absolutely delighted with the presentation. Extended my thanks to the officers and external advisors. I thought it was extremely worthwhile, and I mean, the Provost himself serves on the Planning Committee, and even he found it of great value. To me, it wasn't specifically about permitted. I realised it was permitted development rights, but it wasn't specifically that. It was to try and highlight some of the inequities that I felt are there within the system. And we had a wonderful example of one of the ones that I had raised that was used as an example of an applicant who was charged a planning fee of, I'll say, £300 to erect a garden shed, which would have cost her about £300, whereas the council developed, and I'll refer to Mr. Campbell on this one, I can't remember where the site was, but we built 25, 30 houses at a cost of so many millions of quid, and we didn't even need to go for planning permission. It was under permitted development rights, which is absolutely ludicrous. You know, the term was bonkers, I think, you know, and everybody agreed on that. So moving forward, I would just like to see elements of training, not specifically for councillors to perhaps go and serve on the committee, planning committee or whatever, but training just to alert other councillors, local ward members, to have a good look at the list. Because I was returning from, I was delayed yesterday. I should have been at a planning committee. I called in 2 deputations I'd requested, but due to flight problems, I was delayed in Frankfurt for 24 hours and therefore couldn't make the meeting. But I think the fact that the councillors get a weekly list, I think is something that we need to be advising local ward councillors to take much more involvement in that list, in case there are elements of that they may have to call in on behalf of a constituent, or maybe they themselves have an issue to call it in. Yesterday, I listened to a later broadcast of the planning committee yesterday, and I believe it was Councillor Bailey Kerr who alluded to the fact that this isn't about Councillor McCabe calling in a deputation for Councillor McCabe. This is about actually representing our constituents. This is people's lives that we are dealing with when we're dealing with planning applications. So again, just to close, this wasn't specifically about permitted development rights. This was more about the whole planning regime, if you like, and why I felt it was very important to highlight some of the concerns that I had with it. and took a wee bit of time, but I was absolutely delighted with the presentation that was given. And I think some of my, and well, I do know that some of my council colleagues were a wee bit surprised at it, but I don't think anyone felt it was a waste of time. So again, I extend my thanks to the officers. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks very much, Councillor McCabe. Any other questions? Okay, we'll leave that there. And we'll now move on to agenda item 7, school leaver destinations and attainment 22-23. It's pages 114 to 129 on your agenda papers, and it will be Mr. Reid speaking to that.
Thank you, Provost. Mrs. J is actually going to present the report, and then
Oh,
we'll
okay,
be happy
Mrs.
to
J.
take questions.
Thank you, Provost, and good morning, everybody, and thanks as always for the opportunity to share this report with you. And as always, my thanks would go and extended to my performance team, senior managers for their contributions to this report and for their continuous support for our head teachers and school teams. The purpose for today's report is to provide members with information on the totality of attainment of young people leaving secondary education in academic session 2022 to 23. The report covers the qualifications gained, the progress towards closing the poverty-related attainment gap, and destinations beyond school. Our report demonstrates the impact schools are having on meeting the council plan priority of promoting opportunities, educational attainment, and reducing inequalities. Members are asked to note the school leavers' results for the academic year 22-23, the positive progress made by our pupils over a range of attainment measures, and request the Director of Education's continued engagement with the schools to track and monitor progress in planning for positive leaver destinations moving forward. The report provides background information on the structure of the broad general education and senior phase and clarifies that leaver destinations are captured in a date set in October for pupils leaving at the end of their 4th, 5th and 6th years of secondary senior phase education. Reminders are given that every group of young people is uniquely different and advising against making comparisons with previous cohorts. Attainment comes from a range of accreditations, qualifications and certifications and is accrued over a number of academic sessions. We draw your attention again to the impact of the COVID pandemic, which is still being managed and supported and monitored. And destinations are reflective of the choices that our young people make, as well as the opportunities that are available to them. Those choices may well be heavily influenced by the continuing economic context, as well as the post-pandemic factors. Section 5 shares performance of the 1,766 young people who left secondary education in 2023. This is benchmarked against national averages and our local government benchmarking framework virtual comparator local authorities. Falkirk sits within family group 3 therein, which includes Renfrewshire, Clackmannan, South Ayrshire, Fife, West Lothian, South Lanarkshire and Dumfries and Galloway. Our performance is also benchmarked against our Regional Improvement Collaborative Group, which includes Clackmannan, Stirling and West Lothian. The information in sections 5.3 to 5.18 provides detail to illustrate the overall positive destination figures. Overall, our figures are up, and the percentage of positive destination figures is also up for each year group, taken individually compared with last year. We're proud to report that we have sustained the incrementally improving trend that we've had for a number of years. And when reporting on the initial senior phase attainment results in September 23, I noted the importance of increases of 1 or 2%, and that's a significant achievement in our current context. Some points of note that members are reminded that when looking at leavers attainment over the last few years, that from 2020 to 2022, there were significant disruptions and annual modifications and changes to the senior phase assessment processes. In all of the attainment measures in this report, Falkirk is placed in the top or second quartiles nationally, above or equalling our virtual comparator and regional collaborative authorities in almost all measures. The number of S4 leavers, also classed as S5 winter leavers who count as S4s, has increased from 170 in 2022 to 270 in 2023. For information, these pupils will not then go on to set hires or advanced hires, and the figures in this committee report represent the average of the whole leavers cohort of S4, S5 and S6. As we noted in September 23, Young people are making choices about further and higher education. 1.2% fewer leavers choosing higher education and 0.1% less going on to college courses. There has, however, been a 1.5 increase in young people choosing to go straight into paid employment. As has been previously cited, those choices are influenced by a range of factors, but most certainly by continued economic austerity and the impact of the pandemic, which is described in paragraph 5.7. We are particularly pleased that against the negative publicity about Scotland's performance in literacy and numeracy, that Falkirk was above national virtual comparators and regional collaborative averages for both. This has been achieved by sustaining learning and teaching and assessment of literacy and numeracy across all sectors as a service priority. Sections 5.20 to 5.25 provide detail on performance towards closing the attainment gap and the referencing of the Scottish Index for Multiple Deprivation and the accruing of tariff points from national qualifications. To note, the national establishment referred to in some tables means Scotland, and the SIMD is arranged in 10 deciles, with decile 1 representing pupils in the most deprived circumstances and decile 10 pupils in the least deprived circumstances. Again, Falkirk is above or equals national, virtual and regional performance, and we are especially proud of the progress that our decile 1 and 2 pupils have made. When deciles move to quintiles to compare the 20% most and least quintile 5 deprived areas, we're reporting the attainment gap as beginning to reduce again after increasing at a time during the pandemic and post-pandemic. Some of the factors attributed to this positive trajectory are outlined in 5.25. Sections 5.26 to 5.39 report on the attainment for all measures, which compares the performance of our lowest attaining 20% with the middle 60% and the highest 20%. In the main, Falkirk is placed in the top or second quartiles nationally and above or equalling our virtual local authorities. There are slight decreases noted in some areas. This can be attributed to many factors, as every cohort is different, but also by the increase of S4 leavers who, as I said, will not have accrued higher or advanced higher tariff points. Our commitment and ambition is unwavering to provide curriculum structures and breadth of qualification options that enable our young people to gain the best possible portfolio of accreditation and certification. This is particularly important as noted in section 5.33 at SCQF level 6 for accessing further and higher education, but also to ensure that our young people have the best possible chance of securing employment. Sections 5.40 to 5.46 summarise the breadth and scope of the factors and supports and the quality assurance process which contributes to the progress and improvement. Noting the range of partnerships in place to support attainment and achievement, progress in increasing the vocational qualification offer, commitment to increasing our virtual learning offer, rigorous tracking and monitoring of attainment and attendance, continuous quality assurance, support and challenge across all sectors, and the value placed on the full range of qualifications and accreditations available to our young people. I hope the report has provided helpful detail and explanation of the performance overall, of the contributing factors to progress and improvement, and reassurance of continuous commitment and monitoring to sustain our position as one of the top performing councils in Scotland. Thank you, Provost.
Hey, thanks very much, Mrs. J. I'll now go to Councillor Sinclair to see if there's anything to add as a portfolio holder.
Thank you, Provost. I'm grateful to be at Scrutiny Committee this morning to highlight some of the key points of the report on leaver destinations and attainment from my perspective as portfolio holder for education. I think this is actually my third visit to Scrutiny Committee over the past year on educational matters, and I'm pleased to be here again. I'd like to firstly pay tribute to teachers, central support staff and managers and everyone involved in delivering education to our wee people and young people across every establishment in the district. As we come towards the end of this term, I know how busy and challenging things are right now, but your dedication in keeping your children and young people at the centre of everything we do must be celebrated. Secondly, Provost, I'd like to recognise the unquestionable talent and enthusiasm of our children and young people, which I believe shines through in this report before you today. The information comprehensively presented a moment ago by Mrs. J shows sustainable progress in all areas, which can only be achieved by having engaged young people and consistent high-quality delivery of education.
Turning to the report itself, it is important to note that there will always be variances year on year, given that no two cohorts of learners are the same. Despite these variances, colleagues will note that there are consistently positive and sustainable results in all areas when measured against their virtual comparators, our regional improvement collaborative partners, and that nationally, Falkirk is in a strong position in terms of attainment. In reading this report, it is, of course, important not to be complacent, and I don't believe we are. All establishments across the Falkirk area are persistently pursuing the best outcomes for our children and young people, and this is also reflected in reducing the poverty-related attainment gap by 28 points. Now, the gap remains, but I'm pleased to see that those interventions through pupil equity funding, or PEF, as it's referred to in the paper, and the opportunities this provides for our young people and wee people to learn and achieve in different ways that would not normally be accessible through the traditional curriculum offer, is having the positive impact on learning and attainment that it was hoped to have. Targeted interventions, different learning pathways, and ensuring that every child can learn in a way that meets their specific needs is crucial in giving them the best opportunities as they move through their school career and into the wider world of employment, further higher education, and to achieve in their own individual way. This is further reflected in the points that those young people who have not yet reached a positive destination are supported through the challenges they face after they have left school, to seek the pathways that are right for them. A final point that I would make is that this sustainable progress is not achieved in isolation. In fact, it takes a considerable effort and coordination across multiple partnerships between central officers, schools and partners, and their collective commitment to track, monitor and support continuous improvement for the benefit of our young people. This report shows the results of those collective efforts and the work put into our young people achieving positive destinations. This is a positive report that reflects the dedication of our teams, the talents and achievements of our young people, and shows that sustainable progress is being achieved and will continue to be achieved because of the ethos and culture that exists in all parts of our education system in Falkirk Council. Thank you, Provost.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Sinclair. I've got a question. It's an excellent report, by the way, and just like to say thanks to all the teachers and everyone involved in the education of our children. I think education's everything, really, changes people's lives, and so it's a top priority for me anyway. So I'd just like to say that this report presents a positive picture of attainment across a range of attainment measures, showing that Falkirk performs well against its comparators and the Scottish average. Where the role of the committee is to scrutinise performance with a view to improving performance, it should also acknowledge good performance, which is in this case. Undoubtedly, there is room for improvement, which will present a challenge to Mr. Reid as the new director, and the committee looks forward to reviewing the 24-25 data next year. But I wonder if Mr. Reid could possibly give an overview of his key challenges and goals for the coming year.
Certainly, thank you. Thanks for the question, Provost. I mean, I think first and foremost on everyone's minds is about securing the very best outcomes for our young people, and that depends on the different stages. At different stages, teachers and staff have got different priorities, whether that's in early years, primary, transitioning to secondary. And secondary, obviously, who are ultimately accountable for the outcomes for young people in terms of moving into destinations, positive destinations, that is the most important overriding factor. Schools are planning everything around that, the curriculum that they provide, the support that are provided, the support that's provided to young people who perhaps has difficulty in accessing education, and the support that's provided within school to those that are coming into school who may find it difficult to get into classes. So that universal support and that targeted support is at the forefront of everyone's minds within the service. And I think, as Mrs. J highlighted, this is not achievable just through, if we want to close the attainment gap, then we rely on a range of different partners, and we're fortunate in Falkirk to have strong relationships with partners at all different levels from different organisations in the third sectors, and so that will continue to be one of our main focus as we move through. One of the priorities, of course, is about how we overcome the current challenges that are facing the council in terms of the fiscal position. We obviously have a very complex set of proposals which we're engaging with parents on, with young people on, and with partners on. And so the immediate priority will be to look at the feedback that is coming from those engagement sessions to bring a report back to council following the summer recess on the way forward to ensure that we can continue to achieve results such as this in terms of destinations and attainment, but which will also help the council's financial position. So that will be my immediate priorities following the summer and the arrival of the education team.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Reid. I'll open it up to members for any questions they might have. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Provost. If I can just echo your observations and comments regarding the report, I think it's a very good report from the Director and Mrs. J. I'm very pleased to read the content within it, and my thanks to Councillor Sinclair as well for backing it up so substantially too. I think it's only fair that we do send out our thanks to everyone involved in the education of our young people. I think I only have the one question, Provost. It's to do with the Pupil to Equity Fund. I don't want to get involved in any political to and fro, but we are in consultation with the parents out there about the potential closure or early back to school hours and whatever. I've attended a couple of school meetings where there were some concerned parents there. The one thing that did come out of it was highlighted was to do with the importance of the Pupil Equity Fund and what that actually means to head teachers, what it actually provides. I don't know if either Ian or the officers, the directors can advise me. I understand that the Pupil to Equity funding stream ends either this year or next year. Is there anything in place to continue or either continue the PEF or to replace that? Hearing from head teachers, I think they do have some serious concerns. If Pupil to Equity Fund is not there, they're going to struggle to get funding to pay for these positions, support staff and whatever. I don't know if you have any insight into it all, Ian, through yourself, please.
Mr. Reid.
Pupil equity funding is what I would describe a crucial part of school funding now, and obviously that allocations to schools are determined by a formula set out by Scottish Government, so different schools receive different levels of funding, and the service carefully, although that funding is under the control of head teachers, the service closely works, officers in the service closely work with head teachers to make best use of the funding that individual schools receive so that it's targeted to the young people in the areas that require it most. And I think that is why we are seeing such a positive report in terms of outcomes, in terms of supporting young people into destinations, in terms of attainment, literacy, numeracy, and overall throughout their curriculum. It's our understanding that the Pupil Equity funding is coming to an end in 2026. So currently we're working with head teachers and officers to work out what our exit plan is so that we can make sure that the provision that we have in place is as sustainable as it possibly can be, and so that we are not left in a position that the support that was provided to young people is suddenly removed, because that wouldn't be a good place to be in. It is crucial funding, and it would be our hope, although we haven't had this indicated to us yet, but it would be our hope that it is continued or it comes to schools in a different format, so that much of the essential work that is supporting young people is able to be continued or expanded.
Thank you for the answer. Thank you, Provost. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Any Councillor Benny?
Thank you, Provost. I just want to say it's a very positive report. As a matter of fact, that's obviously thanks to our education services, head teachers and our teachers, and obviously our pupils as well. You know, I was reading it and it is positive, and we have got positive leaver destination for a lot of our young people. The only thing I was wondering, I don't actually see it in the report, but during COVID, I do know that a lot of our young people, their mental health decreased, as a matter of fact. And, you know, I've heard that from teachers as well, that it's taken them a little while to sort of feel better. You know, it has had an impact. I don't know if it's been defined too much, but regarding the school leaver destinations, do we have any data on the young people perhaps that have still been impacted by COVID and they haven't got a positive destination and that they're sick actually still, and maybe getting help from our medical services?
Okay, Mr. Reid.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Brinney. Yeah, if I draw your attention just back to paragraph 5.7 on the report on page 118, 81 leavers were not in a positive destination. Now, this doesn't come as a surprise to schools. It just doesn't suddenly happen that those young people are not in a positive destination. There may have been issues during their time through school, which our pastoral teams and our teachers and our agencies will be working together to provide the appropriate support, whether that's using school-based counsellors, whether that's young people and staff undertaking mental health and wellbeing interventions, whether that's, you know, moving up a tier into agencies such as CAMS or working with children's services. So there are plans and interventions taken at each point throughout, but it is true to say that schools are witnessing an increase in issues in terms of mental health and well-being with young people, but also with their families. And I think we need to recognise that schools are also picking that up, because often if there are issues with mental health in the family, that impacts on young people, that then impacts on their ability to attend school or how they can engage with school when they're there. So yes, there are 81 people there from 22-23 not in a positive destination. They continue, and there is detail there about why some of those young people are not in a positive destination. They will have been impacted by COVID, but I think the important point that Councillor Sinclair made was that they continue to receive support from agencies and from the school. So even though they've left school, we're continuing to provide that support to try and take the steps that are required to move them into a positive destination when they are ready to be in that position.
Thank you for that, Mr. Reid. Regarding the support from the school, to what age does that go up to? Does it stop at a certain age, 18 or older than that?
I think it obviously very much depends at what point a young person leaves school, because it can be at the end of S4, the end of S5, the end of S6. There obviously does come a point where the staff that are in school have to focus in on the young people that they have got. They haven't got unlimited capacity to do that. What we do also get involved in, though, is the follow-up report for school leavers. So when young people initially are reported as being in a positive destination. That's normally around October time that data is gathered. There's a follow-up report that schools are involved in around April time. And at that point, so that's up to a year after they've left school, they're still engaging with young people to try and support them and to try and sustain them in a positive destination. And at that point, it's the role of other agencies to step in and work in partnership to make sure that that's secured.
Thank you for that information.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question around, is there been an increase in pupils maybe taking the vocational route rather than the academic route, wanting to go to university, showing any indication they might want to sort of go into engineering or whatever it may be?
Thanks, Provost. I think what we have worked really hard in Falkirk over the last several years, 5 years and further, and particularly in partnership with Forth Valley College, and I genuinely believe that we have one of the best school college partnerships in the country with our partners at Forth Valley, and fully embracing the DYW strategy from the Scottish Government, the Developing Young Workforce strategy, and all the support that provides, and the links that provides with partners and organisations around Falkirk and around Forth Valley. We've worked really hard to make sure that the curriculum that's offered is not just the traditional curriculum, that it's not just your national fives and you sit an exam and you're higher and then you sit an exam. There's a whole range of qualifications in there, such as National Progression Awards, Foundation Apprenticeships, national certificates delivered in school and delivered by our partners, primarily at Forth Valley College, and those tend to be more vocational. And what's important is the level at which we're offering those, because we've done a lot of work to overcome perceptions about what it means to undertake qualifications other than the traditional types of qualifications, and we've worked hard with partners and with young people to show that a foundation apprenticeship at level 6 is just as valuable and can open as many doors as a higher qualification can. So it's all about, where does that young person want to go? What support do they need to get in order to make that journey? And then what can we offer them in terms of our curriculum? And that's one of the key things that we're looking to protect as we move through the current challenges. So there is an increase in young people moving into vocational destinations, and I should maybe just point out the higher education figures that are contained within that report also account for young people who perhaps move on to Forth Valley College to study a level 7 vocational course. That's included in there, and you can see that that's in a healthy position. But the important bit is the journey that they take throughout their school career and making sure that we've got a very broad curriculum offer for them. We're lucky in Falkirk to have that. They don't have that in all other local authorities, and that's what we want to protect, and that's what we want to further develop, and also harness the opportunities that are coming our way with the Freeport deal and the growth deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And another thing I just wanted to ask was, are there more females moving into STEM subjects these days, that going to university to study science, technology, engineering and maths than before?
Thanks, Provost. I think our STEM strategy, we've got a really strong STEM strategy across Falkirk, and it starts right the way down in early years and moving through primary, all the way through primary and up into secondary until you get to the point where you actually choose the subjects that you want to take. what we're also doing in terms of broadening that curriculum is making sure that it's not just the traditional physics or the traditional maths, that we are increasing offers in terms of things like applications of maths or engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. So the offer is there is broad. In some schools it will be skewed, in other schools it will be skewed the other way. So I'm not detecting off the top of my head a pattern, because we're actually addressing that as we go through anyway. But there's also other things that take place in schools to promote those pathways to all pupils through our Big Bang fairs, the extracurricular activities, the women into science and engineering activities that our schools are engaged with. So I think it's that STEM strategy that was set nationally that has been implemented in our schools, and it's working well. It's getting all young people to go where they want to go. And the other thing I should just add is we have a very strong partnership with LEAPS, which is the Lothian Equal Access Programme to schools. And we're just in the third year of that, I think, in actual implementation. And that is about working with young people who perhaps were not thinking about going on to higher education or further education, who are maybe first in the family to go there, or are working or are living in particular areas of deprivation. And it's opening up the doors and making it easier for them to access courses through that route as well. So all those things combined together, I think, provide a good pathway for whatever path boy or girl wants to take, but there's no particular balance.
I think that was a final question I was going to ask was about equity across the area. So if you're in an area of high deprivation, for example, you'll be taught exactly the same. You'll have the same opportunities to achieve as everybody else. So I was wondering, say if you picked a school that's in an area of high deprivation, what percentage of the pupils at that school going to university, for example? Is it the same across the council, or an area of high deprivation, is there less chance of somebody going to university than somewhere else? I've maybe not explained that very well, but I hope you just...
No, thank you. Thanks, Provost. And again, I think that's where the additional funding that schools receive in terms of pupil equity funding and through SEF and SAC, and you'll be familiar with those acronyms, where schools are using that money with the primary focus of ultimately making sure that young people go on to a positive destination, wherever they come from, and whatever is most appropriate for them, and what they're able to achieve. And it's not, and I think this is really important, and this will be an area of focus as we move forward. It's not just about getting them into a positive destination, it's about getting them into a high quality positive destination. So for instance, when young people learn at level 7 or above, then the average career earnings per year is £10,000 more. Now that makes a huge difference to them individually, to their families, and ultimately to the economic prosperity of the area. So all of the extra funding and all of the extra support that's put in is with that in mind. Now, in 22-23, it was just under 40% that moved into higher education. Now, bearing in mind that's young people that would have gone to university, Stirling, Edinburgh, Glasgow, wherever it is, but also those that are studying level 7 qualifications at one of the further education colleges. But it's about planning the route for those young people and making sure they move on to the highest level of learning and the best destination that they possibly can. And the final thing, just to say about that is, there will be variances across our schools in the percentage of young people that move into HE. That's exactly what the partnership with LEAPS and Career Ready and DYW is all about. It's about breaking down the barriers that get in the way of that, within individual contexts. And I think we're confident, or we're very confident as a service, that schools have got plans in place that are scrutinised in order to make sure that happen and provide the young people with the appropriate support. That's what we can't afford to miss out on.
Okay, so thank you very much for that full response. Is there any, if there's no other questions? Okay, thank you very much. So we'll now move on to agenda item 8, which is the Digital Strategy Update 2024, pages 130 to 152 in your agenda papers, and it's Mr. Stewart that will be speaking to the report.
Thank you, Provost. This report provides an update to the work that's been undertaken to achieve the aspirations of the Council's Digital Falkirk Strategy, approved by the Executive in 2020. Considerable work has been progressed, and the update document provides examples of those project achievements at this interim stage of the strategy. The layout of the update attached as an appendix follows the format of the original strategy document, with the addition of the achievements highlighted in green. Details of the achievements focus on the 6 priority areas set out in the original strategy. In August last year, the Digital Technology and Innovation Board was established to monitor the considerable number of ongoing digital technology and data projects, including those highlighted within the strategy. While members will be aware of the considerable achievements digital has brought to the Council during and following the pandemic, the update also provides information on lesser known projects. The update to the strategy also provides members with an insight into the future considerations and emerging technologies the new strategy will bring forward when it's refreshed in 2025, together with how the performance of those projects will be monitored. To progress the new strategy, a series of roadshows are in planning to not only discuss how the current achievements have been of benefit, but to also understand services needs going forward. This is a good news story about the progress of the strategy, and members are asked to note the update provided.
Thanks very much, Mr. Stewart. Just open up for any questions. Councillor Benny.
Yes, thank you, Provost. Yes, I would like to say it's the Digital Strategy Update 2024. It's definitely very positive and uplifting, and you know, over the years have made huge strides in this area. If you go back 5 years, I don't think they had Teams or anything like that, and it was a different world back then. And I can actually imagine and move on 5 years, 10 years time, they might not be here with artificial learning and artificial intelligence and things like that, doing a lot of jobs that it's a subject that I'm very interested in. The report itself was very detailed, indeed, and it really, as I say, was very positive, sets out all your ambitions and your achievements and things like that, and that is really, really very good. And the only thing I would say is the references key performance indicators and only provides selected examples of targets set. And in actual fact, that was in the main part of the performance report. But however, for the purposes of effective scrutiny, could an exhaustive list of key performance indicators and targets be provided for future presentation? Because we really need to see every little element of the digital strategy, how that works with every service in the Falkirk Council area, and also how it impacts with our communities. You know, that thread of performance with digitals, because we are learning at communities about the digital strategy. I mean, to give you an example, it was a lady that came to me and she was quite upset. This elder lady in the high-rise flats, she wanted to apply for a council house. So she must have phoned up and they says to her, we'll go along to the hub. You have to apply online. Now, this older lady, she hasn't got a computer at home, she hasn't even got a smartphone. There is people still like that, you know, and she went to a hub. Now, this is all hearsay, obviously. She went there and the girl says to her, I'll take you to the computer. There's the computer. Sit down there. basically got on with it. Now, you can imagine somebody who's never been on a computer before and they're just quite frightened. So I'd like to think there was resource in our hubs too for people to learn, people who come along who's never had that, you know, digital chain or experience like going online and that. So that's important. And I also would like, if possible, we mentioned the IT support sessions in libraries. However, it would be good if that was actually rolled out to our communities, because not everybody's got the mobility or even the resource sort of to travel into the town. And we do have these little community halls, and we actually are asking the communities to take them over. So they're going to be the centre of the community. So it would actually be quite good if any IT support sessions were given to our community halls and things like that, and it would be easier for people to learn digital. And we you know, this is the way of the future. It's going to be completely different, so we really need to get everybody on board. I think I had a question there. I think it basically was, could an exhaustive list of key performance indicators and targets be provided at any future presentation of this work?
Thanks, Councillor Benny. Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. I think I'll try and answer that one. We, as I said earlier on, we're going to be refreshing the digital strategy, and one of the key elements of the refresh of the digital strategy is going to be a clear focus on the performance results from it. We have achieved so many things within this digital strategy, and it's clear to see all the achievements that we've made, and we certainly will do that within the next update of the strategy, provide much more information on the performance results from that.
Thank you very much, and thank all the staff that deals with the digital strategy work too. Thank you, Provost.
I would just like to ask, you know, would it be possible, there's quite a significant amount of ambitions in the report. I wonder if it'd be possible if a year's enough to come back with a report on where we are, have we met these ambitions, or, you know, the targets, if you like. Would a year be enough to come back with an updated report?
Thank you, Provost. Well, this is the current strategy that's in place just now. So what we did with the strategy is we looked at all of the ambitions that's highlighted in blue in the strategy document, and then the green part underneath is an update on all of those ambitions, what we've achieved from those ambitions. And I think the next update that we will bring back to committee will be in relation to the new strategy that will be taken forward, and that will provide an update on anything else that we've achieved since then.
So would that be coming to executive or council?
Yeah, that will come to the executive, yeah.
So we're just process discussing. So if it's going to the executive, I think the Provost point was if it goes to the executive, the refresh strategy, would an update on that come later to the scrutiny committee in the same way that this is an update to the original strategy?
Yeah, thank you, Provost. I'll come in on that point. In the revised strategy that we're aiming to put to the executive at some point in 2025, the aim would be, and it's picking up on Councillor Benny's points around having performance indicators in there and really clear measures where we can see whether we're meeting what we've set out. So those performance indicators will then be built into our performance reports that we bring here. So that's where Scrutiny Committee will get oversight of whether we're delivering what we set out to deliver.
Would that be a year's time or something?
We will probably have those figures, those performance indicators determined in a year's time, so we can add them to the plan once executive signed off the actual report, and we'll add them to the performance plan and give Scrutiny Committee the most up-to-date information we have at that point in time.
So a really comprehensive report. I just wanted to ask couple of questions, you know, how we're fiscally challenged. So how often do these devices need, there's one for the schools, 17,000 devices were distributed, so clearly they'll need to be replaced. Is that every 2 or 3 years? And financially, are we in a position to be able to replace these devices, Mr. Reid?
Thanks, Provost. As you can imagine, the devices are heavily used,
Right.
and they have a shelf life, if you like, before they come out of date, and software needing updated and compatibility and so on. They have a lifetime of about 4 to 5 years, and the cost of replacing or refreshing those devices, as well as other associated work in terms of the infrastructure, is around 4.5 million, and that's the capital money that's just been approved. Right. So they're about to be refreshed and replaced, and any upgrading work taking place to the infrastructure to support them in the next coming months.
Pleased to hear that. So a question I wanted to ask the captain, maybe a technical question on how safe are all our systems. You know, for example, in buildings where we're digital everywhere, so is there like a backup generator if the power fails and uninterruptible power supplies and stuff like that? Have we got all that in place? And what's the security of the sort of systems really?
Thank you for that, Provost. The short answer to that is yes, we have all of those. All of the Microsoft stuff is all backed up. It's all held in the cloud. It's all supported there. We do have obviously a room within one of the buildings as well, which stores a number of servers, and those servers are backed up. We have UPS, uninterrupted power supply, connected to all of those as well. We have a generator, which you'll probably see at the front of the foundry as well, which provides uninterrupted supply as well, should the electricity fail. So, and in terms of security, we obviously have established a cyber security team recently, and there's considerable work has been undertaken to maintain security of the data that we have within the council.
That's a good point, because I've every training session that comes out, I do it almost right away, whether it's for fishing or stuff like that. So you're really, well, wait a minute, that's a bit suspicious, so then I'll report it. So I think that element of training is for councillors that's been going out. And does that go out to every employee as well, just to say, be aware of, that's a fishing thing or whatever?
I mean, it's fair to say that we've carried out, I think it's 2 rounds now of cyber security training with everybody. And I think the teachers, I believe, recently done that at their Canadian Service Day as well. So there is considerable work undertaken to ensure that everybody receives a good level on good quality training, to try and identify things that are coming in that are suspicious.
Mine.
Thank you, Provost. I was just going to add to what Alan's saying. So he mentioned that we had established a digital technology and innovation board, and that board meets every 2 months, and cybersecurity and cyber risk is a regular feature of that board. We've got at our next meeting, our team lead for cybersecurity has been asked to bring forward an updated action plan, because we had sort of worked our way through all the actions that were on the cyber risk security action plan, and they've been asked to bring an updated paper for what the next steps are. We had participated in a session that was jointly run from Scottish Government, Stirling Council and Clackmannanshire Council. We all got together to sort of work our way through scenarios relating to cyber incidents, and we're going to take the learning from that and build that into that new action plan. So I think it's a hugely complex area, constantly moving, but we are sort of actively doing a lot of work on a regular basis to try and keep up with the latest developments.
Because we are heavily reliant digitally now, so it's really... So I think I asked this question before, and somebody kind of freaked out when I said it. It was like, do we have anybody that we would set up to try and hack your systems? You know, just say, go and try and hack your system.
Yeah.
An ethical hacker.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Yeah, we do. We obviously have our Cyber Security Essentials accreditation, and we have our PSR accreditation. I can never remember the kind of initials there. And those are carried out, and we receive that accreditation every year. And as part of that work, there are ethical hackers test the council's network and test some of the systems that we have to make sure that they are, they hold up to that hacking.
Wow. So is there a specific report on that once they've done their try to hack? Because they normally walk in and try to cover their tracks on the way out, I believe, these hackers. But the ethical hackers go, we've tested your systems, they're sound, basically. No.
There are various ways that the kind of hackers will try and get into, like any network. And the ethical hackers will identify any concerns that they have and any opportunities that hackers would have to kind of get into the system. And that's why, after that work is carried out, that's how we achieve the PSN accreditation and the cybersecurities accreditation.
But the training has been good, because I remember there was a bit about you may receive an email from a colleague even that says, I've not got my password or something like that. But are you sure is it a new start? Who is the person? So it's really made me kind of think, makes you really aware, and at home when you get these, wait a minute, So I think everybody's got to be on their guard overall and know, and just be really, really aware. So I found the training really, really useful.
I think it's really useful not only for staff, like in the office, but obviously for home use as well. Because I think last week I received an email and I think I'm entitled to £1 million.
Aye. There's some prince in Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely.
So any other questions for Mr. Stewart? Yes, sir.
I've just got a quick question. I think you covered most of it all, Provost. Just quickly, I mean, years ago we all worked in offices, so to speak, and our computer was here, but a lot of Falkirk Council staff's working from home now, aren't they? Different locations, maybe not even in the Falkirk Council area, maybe somewhere abroad, who knows? But so is there extra security? I mean, obviously the technical side I don't understand too well, but is there extra security because of that, because of home working, as a matter of fact, because that would be directional, I think, and signal wise, so there need to be something in there to protect Falkirk Council, really, in case of hacking,
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bunny. When you work from any location, you're logging into the council's network. So it's the council's network that is secure that you're going through, and that's the one that's ensure that we have as much security around that as we possibly can.
So I think what I was meaning was, because you're somewhere else, these hackers are very clever, I suppose, and I know what you're saying, that's sort of separate, but say you were in a country where there was lots of hackers or something like that, or you know what I mean, like, could they attack it more?
They would still be hacking into the network, right, as opposed to hacking into you yourself, so into your kind of like PC. So
right. Thank you
simple.
for that.
Thanks, Councillor Bannon.
Thanks. I would just add to what Alan's saying. We also introduced our geofencing policy to stop people being able to access the network from abroad unless they've specifically asked for an exemption for some reason. So we have put arrangements in place to try and stop that happening. Thank you.
That's right, because when I went on holiday, I was away in Austria and I had to say, I'm in case you get a signal, who's this? So they knew I was going to be there. So, okay, Councillor McCabe.
Thanks, Provost. I just wanted to reassure Mr. Stewart I'm not Colonel Gaddafi's daughter, and I didn't request £1 million from him to put into my, because this is the councillor who has to ask one of the 7-year-olds that Mr. Reid educates how to even switch on the torch on my phone. Thanks. Nice report.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody. We'll now move on to the final report, which is Local Government in Scotland Financial Bulletin 22-23, and it's pages 153 to 161 in your agenda papers, and it'll be Mrs. Templeman that's speaking to that.
Thank you, Provost. So the report on the agenda today presents the Accounts Commission Local Government in Scotland Financial Bulletin, which covers the period 22 to 23, and it's part of the regular reporting cycle for the Accounts Commission, whereby 2 annual reports are produced as standard, and that's a financial bulletin and a general overview. This financial bulletin was published in January 2024, and at this stage the general overview report has not been published. However, for the first time, the Accounts Commission has published a briefing on local government budgets for 24-25, and that has been circulated to members, and it will feature in the budget briefing for members tomorrow afternoon. Whilst the financial overview report in front of you today is helpful, it does focus on 2022-23. And the majority of the information in the report is based on the audited accounts for local authorities for 22-23. And of course, we're now in the process of finalising our 23-24 accounts, so the information is slightly out of date, but many of the key messages remain relevant. The key messages in the report are shown on page 155 of the agenda at paragraph 4.1, and those cover, the first table covers the 22-23 outturn position, and the second table is the 23-24 position and outlook. And I suppose the key points that I would emphasise are that Scottish councils are facing unprecedented financial and service demand pressures. Councils need to innovate at pace and make difficult decisions. Discretion and flexibility over funding are important, as an increasing proportion of funding is either ring-fenced or directed. Councils need to reduce their reliance on non-recurring funding. And as a reminder, Falkirk Council has increased its reliance on this type of funding in the 24-25 budget, and reports to Council have made it clear that that's not sustainable. And finally, communication and consultation with the public are essential in the coming years, reflecting the difficult decisions that need to be made. Members will note that the chart on page 157 of the agenda under paragraph 5.5 shows that Falkirk had the highest budget gap as a percentage of net cost of services in 22-23 after Shetland and Orkney. The same chart has been included in the 24-25 budget briefing, which removes Shetland and Orkney from the comparators, and that shows Falkirk as having the second highest gap after Highland Council. The report makes clear, however, that virtually all local authorities are experiencing acute financial pressures, which are expected to worsen in the coming years. Section 7 on page 159 highlights the budget gaps anticipated for the next 2 years, and I think it's worth saying that in discussions with directors of finance, there is a view that those gaps may well be understated. And while some service areas continue to be protected, this puts much more pressure on unprotected areas such as roads, environmental services, sports, leisure and central support services. So I have no doubt that members will be familiar with all of these messages through the various finance reports that have already come in front of you, and no doubt that members are already familiar with the challenges that are facing the council. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Mrs. Templeman. But why are we so high up in the table? Why is the gap so big? Is that because we're not taking the tough decisions?
I think it's our it's mainly due to our reliance on non-recurring funding, and we've, you know, I've talked before about the fact that if in, for example, 24-25 we apply £22.5 million of reserves, when we go into 25-26 we automatically add £22.5 million to our gap. So that build-up of reliance on non-recurring reserves is a big part of the reason that we're so high. Also, things like our relatively low council tax, and also the fact that our income from council tax, because we have less houses in the higher bands, is proportionally lower. So, and I think, just I suppose to go back to your question in terms of difficult decisions, we know that there have been savings that haven't been accepted by council. That adds to that reliance on non-recurring reserves, so it does have an impact.
Any questions from members? No, I've got another question. Are you satisfied that the council's financial strategy will address the short-term financial pressures and long-term financial sustainability?
I think we had a report this week at executive, which looked at the corporate risk register, and financial sustainability was one of the highest rated risks, and I had sort of flagged that in my covering presentation. I think at this point in time, I still see that as a high risk, and I would like to see more mitigations in place that would reduce that high risk. So we know that we've got a balanced position for 24-25, albeit a high reliance on non-recurring reserves. We've had the discussions that service concessions buy us a little bit of time, but we have also had the discussions that unless there's a significant step change in our approach, 2026-27 becomes a very difficult year for us. So, or an even more challenging year because many of our reserves may have run out by that point in time. So I think we have a position 24-25, but the challenges are huge. I don't think we are in a position where we could comfortably say that the financial strategy will fully mitigate the risk that we've got with financial sustainability. I think there's more work to do, and that work is about around, we've talked before, the only options for balancing this gap are through council tax, fees and charges, and reducing spend. And it's got to be a combination of those three.
Yeah. Any other? Councillor Bunny?
You're just sort of coming in making a point, and I do understand that, like, reducing spend, and as we know, like, members, like, when we go to council, go to committees and things like that, it can be political. So that is something that obviously I think the officers can't control, really, basically. So I suppose, I don't know if you would agree, Amanda, but the risk, I would say sometimes with a lot of the financial strategy and things like that, really, part of it is unknown, part of it is known, things that you can do, but part of it is unknown. So would you say that is the sort of greatest risk, not known from decisions that are made by elected members?
I mean, I think in terms of financial sustainability, just as you say, there's a lot of sort of knowns and unknowns. There's a lot of assumptions in what we are doing. So, for example, we will make assumptions on where inflation might go, or interest may go, or where pay awards might go, and how much grant we're going to get from the Scottish Government. The two biggest sort of factors that impact on our gap is how much grant we get and what the pay awards are. Those are the two single biggest factors that impact on the gap itself. And then, the reality is we're in a political organisation, and as officers we are not the decision makers. So we have to put the decisions in front of council and take it from there. And I think it's just about how well we all try and work together and work with members throughout the course of the year to try and make sure you have all the information that you need in front of you to be able to make that decision, and also that you're aware of both the risks of making the decision and the risks of not making the decision. And I think that's what our role is.
Thanks. I beg your pardon. Sometimes there's another layer in that. Sometimes it's the power of the people, the power of the communities that can influence elected members too. And obviously it depends really on the programme we've got of proposals like coming forward to members. So it really is quite a complex situation sometimes as well. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yep, and I think the report from the Accounts Commission recognises that councils are having to make a lot of decisions that are very unpopular, and that in some cases have been reversed as a result of that kind of public pressure. And so what the report is emphasising is the importance in terms of good communication and good engagement with the communities, and we've certainly been having a lot of discussions about that at our CMT and our senior leadership group, and we are trying to devise a plan to help support the financial strategy in September and then the budget in February. So we're doing quite a lot of work in that area, but I think given the scale of the challenge, there's an inevitability that there will be unpopular decisions that will have to be taken. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no further questions, we'll just conclude the meeting. I'd just like to say this will be the last meeting of the Scrutiny Committee in its current form. External scrutiny, internal scrutiny's merging, and there'll be, I think, 15 members on the new Scrutiny Committee. So I'd just like to thank everybody, current members, for their input over the past few years. I think everybody contributes very well. So we'll see who's on the next Scrutiny Committee. So thanks very much for that, and thanks everybody for attending today. Thank you.